So it says we're live. I guess it doesn't have a screen, the countdown. Hello, everybody. I guess we're
Hey,
live now.
yeah, maybe somebody
Um,
can let us know in the comments
yeah,
section.
verify that. I guess I'll pull the stream up on on another screen, see what happens. Um, this is a first live stream for me and for Ernest here, so please um, be a little gracious with us as we try and figure this stuff out.
Right.
So, I'm Julian, and this is Ernest of Found Ernest. He's a friend of mine. Why don't you take a second and kind of introduce yourself, and I will figure out this whole live stream thing while you're
Okay.
doing that.
Well, my name is Ernest. I'm with Found Ernest. I started my channel a little over a year ago, and I I'm a well, I hate the term baby Christian, but I'm a I guess I grew up culturally Christian, and then as you know, the more I experienced in life, the more I saw God's presence in my
Hmm.
life, and uh, and got to witness the miracle of finding a wife and having four babies, and definitely felt the draw to God, more as I've gotten older. I
Awesome.
guess I've been a better listener as I've gotten older. I don't think he was ever not there, but and then felt recently led to start my channel here, and and we're coming up on the 1 year anniversary of the Seek and Share Truth conference, which really kind of pushed me into off the start line, I guess, as far
Hmm.
as the channel is concerned. So
Let me get
um,
that up actually too. I'll bring that up so people can see if actually if people don't know what the Seek and Share Truth conference is, can you explain a little bit about that? You went to the last one and I was not able to make it, so you know more than I do.
right, no, it was a really great experience, and got to meet people in person that I've been watching online for years.
Hmm.
And so it's just a really cool experience to see these people in person, and just get to talk to people that otherwise would have never, maybe they might reply back in a comment section or something like that. But it
Yeah.
was just really cool to sit down and talk with these people, and it was a lot of fun, and learned a lot in the process too. Um, it was, for me, it was really inspirational as far as I I had set up the channel, and I kind of had like my gear and stuff like that, and but never really felt like the push to get things going. And after going to this event, and getting to meet all the great people, all the speakers, it really did encourage me to get things going.
Awesome. Speaking of getting things going, I suppose we should start talking about some contradictions.
Sure. Well,
So,
you wanna? Well,
well, I'll
wait. You
give a little
gotta.
bit of. You go
Yeah,
ahead.
give a bio.
Yeah, I got to give a backstory. Well, first about me, I suppose. Yeah, I started YouTube. This was Veterans Day 2021, and it's been a wild ride since then. I took a hiatus for a while. Um, I've had to deal with figuring out YouTube while having a young baby at the same time and all this kind of stuff, but it's been really great. It's been a really great ride so far, and I'm excited to see where things go. This is the first live stream, so it's a big step for both of us.
And
Um,
congratulations on the success of one of your more recent videos.
Thank you. Yes. Yes, I've had one video hit 400,000 views now, which is insane. That was one that I took some information from J. Warner Wallace and made a video from it. And it was called Why Jesus Had to Come 2,000 Years Ago and Not Today. And man, everybody pushed it in the algorithm because there are plenty of people who were like, hey, great video, and others that were like, this is so stupid. So so it was fun.
Yeah, one of
And
them you shared with me. I think it was back to back, right? It was like, this is the best thing I've ever seen, and
yeah,
what
I
is
posted it.
this?
Yeah, I posted that on the community post, and I said the dichotomy of man, because one person said like greatest video ever, and the other person was like, this is terrible, hate this. Yeah, yeah. All right. So to talk about the whole contradictions thing, I want to talk about where I got started with this. So I came across some Bible contradictions and didn't really know what to do with them, and started looking up some stuff. And I quickly realized that people will just pull up tons and tons and tons and tons of Bible contradictions. And you can make a claim of like thousands and thousands of them apparently. Some I've heard someone say there were 40,000 Bible contradictions, which I don't know how you get that number, but it started because there was this website that came out a few years ago, and I think it's been resurrected. It died for a while, but I think it's been resurrected, where somebody made an infographic that showed all of the connections between the Bible books. So you click one verse and it references another verse or quotes another verse or something, and somebody just made a really pretty infographic. And so it had like rainbow colors on it. It looked really nice. All these streams going back and forth between the different books. And then somebody took that and turned it into another infographic and eventually a poster where it highlighted all of the supposed contradictions in the Bible and then made them all red. So it was like, we're pointing out all the problems in the Bible. Here you go. And there were something like, I want to say maybe 500 on there, maybe 450, something like that. And I looked at the poster and I was like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. How am I ever going to look at all of these? But I eventually found a high enough quality photo online that I could actually zoom in and look at everything because it was all really small text too. Found out a couple things. One, it's by people called the Reason Project, which I think is defunct now. It was sponsored by Sam Harris and his wife, whose name I can't remember right now, and it had the credits for the people who made it. And I gotta be honest, if I was an atheist, I wouldn't put my name on that thing because I I did a video on this, but maybe I'll do something more in detail later. But there are lots of problems with the poster itself, like lots of typos. There were some contradictions that were duplicated, like back to back duplicated. They just had the same one twice in a row. Uh, Specifically, they took one contradiction from Ezra and Nehemiah, which we'll get to at some point in the live stream, and split it up into like 15 different contradictions when it's really just one problem.
Hmm.
So things like that maybe go, this is not great. But I found out where they pulled a lot of their information from, and that was called the Skeptics Annotated Bible. So actually, I'm going to share real quick. Skeptics Annotated Bible. Let's see.
Well, that's the problem too, is most people that are seeing these so-called contradictions, they're not really doing the research and looking
No.
into them any deeper than, just surface level.
Yeah.
And then they copy paste, and send it to, the echo chamber.
Right.
But
Or they'll have it in their Facebook post and their grandma sees it or whatever.
right, which I mean,
Um,
really is kind of a setup. It's they're basically, it's a setup to fail essentially. Like, do a little research on, uh, I guess the things that you're standing on. If you're making a claim like that, like at least look into it a little bit beyond, a Facebook post or something
Beyond
like that.
very, very surface level.
Right.
So I'll see if I can find this on the website, but there's a page on the website where he explains his methodology. By the way, this is from Steve Wells. I've actually talked to him a little bit, which is awesome. He has a YouTube channel, and I messaged him on there, and he messaged me back, which was really cool. He's a very ardent atheist, and I gotta be honest, I think he's a little bit angry at the Bible or at church or something in his life. There's some kind of emotional thing going on there
Mhm.
because he is like obtuse in the literalness that he uses when he's approaching the Bible. It's woodenly literal to use the term. It's woodenly literal, and I hope to show that in this video or in the live stream and successive live streams that we do or whoever. Um, a few years back, around the same time that that poster was going viral, there's a physical copy of the Skeptics Annotated Bible, which I do not have. I mean, they have the companion website, so I've been using that. But the physical copy kind of made the rounds too. And there's a few YouTubers, um, atheist YouTubers, that sung praises of this book. And it's got some it's got some endorsements from some really high profile people. I'll find those two. Sam Harris for one. I want to say Michael Shermer. He's another prominent atheist, and oh, Peter Boghossian. Peter Boghossian. So he wrote a book called The Manual for Making Atheists, something like that. And he has this whole thing called street epistemology, which is another kind of very obtusely literal way of looking at the Bible and epistemology. And he said in this quote that he left as a review for the book that it's the only book that he keeps on his desk. And it might have been him or it might have been Sam Harris who said this book needs to be in every hotel room in America, in place of the Gideon Bible. This Bible needs
Mm.
to be there because it's a version of the Bible, but it's got all these comments from Steve Wells, who's a skeptic. Keep in mind that this is a one person translation of the Bible. Well, I guess he's
Mm.
not really even translating it. It's based on the King James, but he just has his comments in there. So it's a one
So is it
person commentary.
like an atheist commentary?
Yes. Yeah. So
Is,
skeptic, as far as these conversations are concerned, skeptic means atheist.
mm.
Yeah. So you're going to say something?
Oh, sorry. No, no, that's what I was saying was, is it basically an atheist commentary, like
Mm-hmm.
biblical commentary? But and what was his name again?
That's Steve Wells. He has a website and a YouTube channel called The Bible in Fewer Words. And I'm not sure why it's called that, but I'm guessing they try to make the stories clearer without, all the things that they see as being wrong in the Bible. But whatever,
Mm.
it's him and his wife, the two of them together. So I messaged him on the YouTube channel, and there were a couple articles on this website that were missing. The links were missing because the website got updated or something and it was broken. So I messaged him about that, and he was actually able to restore them, which was great because that meant that I could actually look at them and then respond to them.
Mm.
But he was a very nice guy online. I'm sure he's a great guy, but there's a lot of vitriol that comes through when he's critiquing the Bible, and I think
Mm.
that's a problem.
Yeah, it
So,
always seems like there's a like an axe to grind. It's one thing to just
yeah.
disagree with something and go on with your life, but uh it always, I don't know, it just kind of surprises me, like in the comment sections, and I kind of enjoy it. Like, it's kind of fun, the challenge, of the back and forth, and I try to do it with, with it in mind that it's not really about like winning an argument or scoring points or whatever. Like ultimately the goal is to pull them over to my side, so
Right.
um
It's not about winning the
sometimes.
argument.
Right, exactly. And sometimes, like, uh, you use different tactics to do that sometimes. And,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes it takes like a heavy hand and sometimes it takes a more gentle approach, It kind of depends on how you just kind of get a feel for how to respond to people being on how they, I guess, how they launch their attack. You kind of, uh, just kind of like uh, feeling the person out, like as to how best to respond to maybe have a breakthrough moment, like Greg Kukul says in his book Tactics, is his goal isn't to convert someone to Christianity. It's really just to put a pebble in their shoe. Just
Mm-hmm.
leave that little thought that kind of sticks with them and just rolls over in their head, like, you know
I
something
can't
that
stop
really
thinking
kind of
about
like,
this.
yeah, just something
Yeah.
and just leave them with the thought, because ultimately, it's the Holy Spirit that does all the work anyway. So um
Yeah, you're right. And in the opposite direction, actually, I think a lot of things like contradictions are used by skeptics to kind of be a pebble in the shoe of Christians,
mhm,
where they can't stop thinking about it, and
right.
they'll pull out two verses and go, "Hey, look at this," and then you look at
Mhm,
those two, and on the face of it, it's like, "Dang, that contradicts."
mhm.
And if you don't look into it and you don't look at what people have been saying about it and possible harmonizations and things like that, then it's like, well, crud. I thought the Bible was inerrant, but now there's a big old contradiction staring me in the face. So now what do I do? And
Well, yeah, and I
lots
kind
of
of see
people
it
have
as
left
like,
Christianity because of that.
well, I see it as like, thank you for doing my homework for me, you know?
Yes,
Um,
that's
like,
true. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I mean, how long would I have had to scour the Bible to find, what they, they've got a prepared list, of things they
Mm-hmm.
go through. And in most cases, and I'm sure you'll talk about it, but in most cases, they're not even by definition contradictions, Um,
Yes, yes.
so,
A lot of them are like that. Um, yeah, I'll explain a little bit about that now, actually. So, uh, this was like over a year ago. I decided to just go through this whole website and see what I could find and if these really were contradictions and whatnot. And I guess I'm still sharing the screen here, so I'll show everybody. This is the updated list, which has, as you can see, 556 on it. So 556 alleged contradictions in the Bible. So have fun going through all of these, right? Who would be crazy enough to go through every
mhm,
single one of these? Um, yeah, so they'll bring up they being skeptics. If you're in a casual conversation with somebody, inevitably, I think, if you're talking about the Bible, you're going to get to some kind of contradiction, and they'll bring up one, and you'll go home and research it and bring an answer back, and then they just kind of toss it out, and they bring up another one, and then another one. And this website is proof that they could bring up 556 in a row, and there's no way you're going to do research back to back on all of those while talking to somebody
mhm,
because like they can always come up with more. So that's not really the big issue. As far as apologetics goes, the big issue is that they are sinners and need to repent, obviously, just like anybody does. But if they have obstacles in the way between them and God, and those obstacles are contradictions, then the research that you do to help harmonize those, I think, will be very helpful. But I think mostly the research that is done on this front is to help Christians not have so many doubts. And so I decided to go through these. And this is not all like theology in a vacuum, me doing this all by myself. I'll share this. There's another website that I found that is a godsend. It is called Contradicting Bible Contradictions. This website is awesome. It's contradictingbiblecontradictions.com. It's a real mouthful. And on the face of it, I'll say I don't agree with every solution that this guy proposes, but here's 492 of those 556 that he went through and answered all of them. And it took him like 4 years. This was this guy doing it by himself. So, yeah, this guy's name is BJE Van Noort. He's European. But
So
that
what is that a
helps
difference
streamline the
of?
process. Hmm.
So what is that a difference of? It's like how many
Uh,
are
I'm
are
glad you
left?
asked. So the reason he did 492, I'm guessing, I don't have an answer for this, but I'm guessing it's because that's just what was on the website at that time. Because
Mm,
as far as I know, Steve updates it from time to time. That's what he
mhm.
said in one of the YouTube comments that he responded to me on. And so that's just my guess. Because he said in the original book there were 470 something,
Oh, okay.
and now there's 492 that are being responded to on this website, and now the actual website is 556. And there was even one that actually I talked to him about where he actually decided, no, I don't really see this as much of a contradiction anymore. I'm actually going to take it off the website. So there's some fluidity in the number there. That's
Mm.
why not all of them have been answered on there. But there's also a list on here of, see if it'll come up, 101 Shabir Bible contradictions. So this is Shabir Ali, who you would know. He came up with 101 Bible contradictions and I think published it as a book. And that made waves years ago too. A lot of them overlap, so that's why I have not gone to the trouble of answering 600 and what 57. It's like 600 just about between the two of them, and I added a couple more just to get it to a round number.
Mhm.
Um, so yes, I went through and researched 600 Bible contradictions. Well, actually, technically, I have 12 left. Those ones have been taking a little bit longer, but I'm nearly there now, and I figured it'd be a good time as any to start sharing them with other people.
Right.
So
Well,
a
I
lot
wonder
of
if the
this.
same rules apply to the website as what they're applying to the Bible. It's like their argument
Mhm.
basically is, well, we can't trust the Bible because look at all these contradictions we've found. But then if we go on
Yeah.
their website and we debunk 492, which was probably all of the contradictions that they claimed at the
Mhm.
time, and then they
Right.
added, what, 60 something more since then. Does the same rule apply? Is their website now not trustworthy because some of
Good
their claimed
question.
contradictions aren't contradictions after all?
Yes. This also gets to the question of what inerrancy actually means. I'm going to go back to the um, Skeptics Annotated Bible website because I want to show you guys something. There's a page on here called About the Contradictions. And this is really the core of by the way, if you know Dan McClellan, that's him by the way. Um
Well, and I can't get over the logo. It's
yeah, stabbing through the Bible.
yeah, it's like, well, no, it's stabbing through their Bible. It's
Oh
stabbing
yeah.
through their
That's
version,
funny.
their skeptic version of the Bible. It's like,
They're
well,
calling
that's kind of
themselves
what we're
out.
doing. That's kind of what we're doing right now with, you know, it's just kind of ironic. I don't think they probably thought that that logo through very well, but
You know what? I think he's actually changed this page since the last time I looked at it. I think most of the words are the same, but there's definitely a different format or something is different since the last time. But the main point is still on here. He says, contradictions are, in my opinion, the least of the Bible's problems. Never mind the fact that he has a whole website talking about Bible contradictions. I
mm.
include them for just one purpose. It shows that the Bible, whatever else it may be, is not inerrant. And
Imagine
he
if he did a
says,
website over the greatest of the Bible's problems. It's just kind of funny that he dedicated so
yeah,
much time and energy to something that he doesn't even consider to be, you know,
well,
a big deal.
here's the thing. A lot of the contradictions actually do get at some of the big objections in the Bible, like um, the conquest of the Canaanites, or slavery in the Bible, or
Mm,
women in the Bible, or whatever, all these kinds of things. And strictly from a contradiction point of view, they're not really contradictions. If you look at what the definition of a contradiction actually is, and we'll get there, they're
mm,
not really technically contradictions. He kind of includes them as moral contradictions,
mm.
um, which is a whole different thing. And this is actually why I wanted to bring this page up because it's on here somewhere. Well, maybe,
Honestly, it makes it seem kind of petty. It's like,
yeah,
I'm going to
you
pick at all
could.
these little things that I don't think matter. Well, it's like, well, how about focus on you know,
He says
and
instead,
I'm
for
not
all.
familiar with this site, so I'm not sure, I'm not aware of what the examples that are being brought up.
Yeah. Well, there's 2 points I want to make on this, and I don't see it on this page, but I copied it down, so if he took this part off this page, then I still have it. But he says that the contradictions aren't really the big problem. The big problem is that it's a morally inept book. It's like it's repugnant. He doesn't like the morals of the Bible. So that's the big issue for him. He's calling it out, which, I'm glad that there's the transparency there.
Hmm.
Um,
But
but
I
he,
wonder based on what standard does he get his standard of morality? You know,
yeah, good question. That's always the question, isn't it?
right?
The other point,
That would be a Frank Turek response.
yeah, yeah, it would be. There's another point I wanted to make based on this page, though. Give me a second, because I just forgot it. um, oh yeah, he says it proves that the Bible, whatever else it may be, is not inerrant. But here's another, I think, misunderstanding from Steve's perspective. He takes everything from the King James Bible. Those are all, if you look through any of the articles on here, you click on it and it'll bring you to a King James reference. And so he's saying, therefore, the Bible's not inerrant. And, he's not without reason here because a lot of Christians have said this, but the King James Bible is not the Word of God. That sounds heretical, I'm sure, to some people. But the modern translations that we have are just that. They're translations. If you want the
Hmm.
actual inerrant word of God, you look to the Greek or Hebrew originals.
Hmm.
And surprise, surprise, we don't have the originals anymore, but we have tons of copies through which
Right.
we can reconstruct the originals.
Right.
So you look to
I mean,
those.
it's right. Technically, I mean, it is the word of God, but it's in a different language than it was originally written down in.
Right, right. And when I say Word of God, I don't mean to say that you can't read the King James Bible and find the truth of God's Word in there. I think you can.
Right.
But in order to say that it's the inerrant Word of God, like there's no errors in it at all or whatever, I'm not going to apply that to the King James Bible or the CSB or the NIV or the ESV. I'm going to look back to the manuscripts that we have. And so
Mm.
a lot of, some of the contradictions that he proposes are a result of like textual variance between manuscripts, and that's a whole
Right.
other question. That's not really a question that the King James Bible has an answer for.
Right.
So
Yeah, like
yeah,
a
there,
scribal error.
right. The I gotta be honest, the King James only Christians would object to this, but I think based on the study that I've done through this whole process, it's led me to believe that the King James Bible is not like inerrant. It has some things that more modern translations have corrected. Um, but I don't think that means that you throw out your King James Bible. I'm fine with reading it. That was actually the
Mm.
first Bible that I read all the way through. First
Mm.
time I read the Bible all the way through. It was King James. So I
Mm.
don't have a problem with it. I just would, I want to, I don't want to be hyper confident in the printing of the King James Bible for like my theology or my salvation or whatever. I'm not going to be
Well, I think
hypercritical like Steve is, but I'm not going to be hyper confident either.
right. Yeah, a lot of people put too much emphasis on the words that were chosen in the King James
Yes.
Bible when and it to me, I mean, honestly, it seems, I hate to say it, but it seems kind of lazy. It's like if you come up to a word, to say, well, that's all it could possibly mean without doing any research on, well, what was the word in Greek or what was the word in Hebrew? And then
Uh-huh.
do like a little bit of digging on it. Um, and I love the King James version. It's not one that I typically read, but somehow it's the one that comes to mind, like when I'm thinking of a verse, that's
Yeah.
the verse. The King James version of the verse is the one somehow that, you know, is more accessible in my mind, which is kind of weird because it's the one I've probably read that translation the least. And so I don't know, there's something beautiful about it, but I do think that I do think that I've seen like some King James only people, I guess like maybe put too much maybe put too much faith in the translation as opposed to the Bible itself, I guess.
Mm-hmm. People are telling me that the sound is terrible on my end. Sorry about
Uh
that. Actually, my wife just came in and told me this is probably much better.
okay.
Yeah, I wasn't speaking directly into the mic, so sorry about that, everybody. I will boost it a little bit as well, just to be sure. Um, so I hope the first part of the video isn't unwatchable, but oh well. So give me a second and I'll boost it. All right, cool.
Sorry, I would have said something earlier, but I didn't
Yeah,
notice.
it probably sounds fine to you and
It
me.
sounded
So,
fine.
hey, it's a first live stream. Here we go. It's not without problems. Our live stream is not inerrant. There you go.
I'm glad it wasn't my on my end because I might not know how to fix it. So
Yeah. Yeah. Um, okay, well, with that, that's a good way to get into the actual contradictions. Let's actually get started. So, I have some slides here. This by no means is all the research that I've done on this, but if you want to follow along, actually, this will not be available until I'm actually finished with it. Like I said, I have 12 contradictions left, but I have a whole Excel spreadsheet and Word document on all this stuff. And yeah, I did a rating system for the contradictions, whether they are laughable, not immediately obvious, They have several options for harmonization, or there's like a legit general contradiction that doesn't have a good answer. And I'm near the end now, near 600, and I have not found one where I would say it's in the last category yet, where it's a legit contradiction. And the other ones that are left, I don't think will be there either. The vast, vast majority of them, I think 63%, I put in the laughable category. And
Laughable.
laughable, like you look at it and you
Oh,
just read them, or you read a little bit of context and it's fine.
mm.
Um, your brother in Christ says it's better than making her write it on a whiteboard. At least I'm not Ali Dawa. Yeah. Ooh, yeah. Um, did you see that video?
I did not.
Ali Dawa, I put a little clip of it on my YouTube channel because I couldn't believe it. He did a video on marriage. They were commenting on some other couple that had gotten divorced, and he did it with his wife, and she's, in the full, I don't remember if it's burqa or niqab or whatever the term is, but she's decked out. He's sitting there with the microphone and all that kind of stuff, and she's not talking. She has a whiteboard. In order to speak in the video, she hands him the whiteboard.
I may have seen a clip, but I didn't understand the context of it.
Yeah, yeah,
It was like really cringy.
yeah. It is cringy. He and she both said that it was because she just simply didn't want to talk. But I mean, come on, you got to look at your optics. Like,
Yeah.
your wife is sitting there with only this little bit right here uncovered of her and like
Mhm.
part of her hands. And then she's writing on a whiteboard in order to talk to her husband in front of other people. It
Mhm.
doesn't look good.
Yeah. Yeah. It reminds
The
me
internet will be the death of Islam, that's for sure.
there was somebody went to a protest and they blended in with the crowd, but the banner that they had in this one in this one in this one example, they they had a banner and it had a woman in a burqa tied to a pole, but in big letters it said respect Islamic property rights. So the people, they didn't really know. They're like, wait, are they with us, or are they, protesting our event?
Oh man.
They didn't really know how to, they didn't know what
This
category to put them in.
On just about
But
every Islam video I see, somebody posts women advocating for Islam is like chickens advocating for KFC. And it's just so true. So before we get
it
on
is.
to a whole nother tangent there,
Oh
let's
yeah,
actually talk about contradictions. Hey,
sure.
maybe I could do a video on contradictions in the Quran. That'll be a fun one. There's lots and lots more of those.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I've
So,
always wondered, and I had an opportunity to speak with a Muslim woman one time
mm-hmm,
um about like I mean, it was tough because I was trying to be respectful because she was a friend
uh-huh.
and a friend of my wife's, and so I didn't want to step on any toes. So I was trying to be as careful as I could with the way that I worded it, but I was really genuinely curious, like what is in it for them? Like for a woman in Islam, like what when I think of like heaven, and then I think of the like the head like Jenna,
Uh-huh.
in comparison, it just does not seem like it doesn't seem like a very it doesn't if I was a female, it would not have an appeal to me.
It's almost like it was written by a carnal man and
Exactly.
not from God. Wow,
Right.
imagine
Right.
that.
Right. That it would only
Uh,
appeal to, you know.
so, yeah, imagine a heaven where it's a giant pearl and you have all these wives and like separate families with each of them, and they're all on different parts of the pearl so that they can never see each other, right? And they're all like separated there. But then somehow there's also tons of virgins for you to mess around with in heaven.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
it's confusing. It's man's
Translucent
paradise.
translucent demon women from hell. I mean, it's really strange.
Yeah.
I heard Christian Prince, and I don't mean to like swerve so hard into Islam, but it's kind of funny. Christian Prince did like speaking of whiteboards, he did this little stick drawing on the screen, and he was kind of doing a little math problem, but and I'm not sure if the like if it was in the the hadiths or what, but it was basically like in heaven women are 10 times more beautiful. So he was like, I'm not really that good at math, but if on earth you're a 1 and in Jenna you're a 10, and he's just
Uh-huh.
like, but on earth if you're a 10 and Jenna you're 100. He's like, so you're still 10 times as ugly as the prettiest woman. Like what benefit is it to be 10 times as beautiful if you're still 10 times as ugly as the prettiest woman? But it was
Uh,
a little funny little stick math problem diagram that he did.
if I look these up, am I gonna get scarred? Is this gonna be bad? Quran 35:18.
I'm not
Um,
familiar with.
okay, I'm just gonna take another detour. Sorry, everybody, but this is fun stuff. Quran 35:18. One second.
Why you do that. I always thought it was interesting that, like, speaking of contradictions, the
Mm,
shirk is the greatest sin in Islam, but to become a Muslim, you have to say the Shahada, which assigns partners with Allah.
yeah, yeah, it
You know,
does.
like you
Yeah, hey,
can't become a Muslim without acknowledging Muhammad. It
right.
just it seems kind of
You
odd that you're
don't you
forced to commit the greatest sin to become a member of that faith.
don't you pray to Muhammad too, technically?
Yeah.
I think David Wood said this at one point, but he's maybe him or like God Logic, Avery, I don't remember. Somebody said, to a perfect God, every sin is shirk.
Hmm.
Shirk being, the greatest sin in Islam. To a perfect God, every sin is shirk because you make yourself God whenever you choose your will over God's will. And I was like, oh my gosh, that is awesome. So
Or it,
these
it separates you from a holy God, and
it
you're in
does.
need of a savior at that point.
Yes, it does.
Yeah, I
So
remember David Wood had that debate with Hijab
yeah,
when it was like he doesn't pray to, he prays for, but who's he praying to when he's praying for Muhammad? It's anyway.
yeah, I don't know. So real quick, these Quran verses. This is 35:18. No soul burdened with sin will bear the burden of another, and if a sin-burdened soul cries for help with its burden, none of it will be carried, even by a close relative. So everybody's carrying their own sin, I suppose. You, O prophet, can only warn those who stand in awe of their Lord without seeing him and establish prayer. Whoever purifies themselves, they only do so for their own good, and to Allah is the final return. And then 16:25, let them bear their burdens, in full on the day of judgment, as well as some of the burdens of those they mislead without knowledge. Evil indeed is what they will bear. Huh. Well, there you go. Um, yeah. Well, there you go. Contradiction
Nice.
in the Quran. Now,
Nice.
speaking of contradictions, let's figure out what a contradiction actually is. So now I can finally get around to reading this slide.
Okay.
This is what Aristotle says about contradictions, that the same thing should at the same time both be and not be for the same person and in the same respect is impossible. So you got to ask 3 questions when considering a potential contradiction. Is it the same thing? Is it the same time period? And is it the same sense? Is the language employed in the same sense? Because there's plenty of opportunities where it could be one or two of those, but not the third, and then it's not a contradiction. So, like, you could say, Robert is poor as one sentence, and then Robert is rich as another sentence. Oh, alhamdulillah, there's a there's a
Right.
contradiction.
Hmm.
Um, but it could just be Robert was poor at one point and Robert is now rich. They're two different time periods, or
Right.
there's two different Roberts.
Right.
Or Robert is poor in material wealth, but he's rich in spiritual things. That they're not
Right.
in the same sense. So you could have those sentences coexist, but not be contradictory. So you have to look at context. Imagine that.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
then,
Or you could
go
have
ahead.
3 people, or it could appear like it's 3 different people, but they have 3 different names. They're known by 3 different names,
Yeah, yeah,
like
that could
Peter,
happen.
you know, Peter, Simon, Cephas.
Yeah, true. And some of those we'll get to in future live streams. That does happen. Let's see. This question that must be asked when attempting to harmonize two or more verses or passages is this. Does this harmonization make sense given the entirety of the surrounding context? And that includes, but is not necessarily limited to, literary context, so nearby verses and chapters and paragraphs and whatnot. Canonical context, meaning you look at the Bible as a whole, not isolated books. And then historical context is the setting and the environment of the authors. And then you can include extra biblical sources and history and all kinds of stuff like that. So, yeah, all those together, when you have those criteria in there, it really cuts down the field of what is alleged contradictions.
Mm.
And remember this is the most important thing. You only need to show the possibility of harmonization between two passages that appear to conflict in order to negate the force of an alleged contradiction. So harmonization, you're going to find disagreement between scholars on this. Some people will try to find like they'll try to harmonize every alleged contradiction and provide an exact answer for it, like a literal answer.
Mm.
And then you'll find some who are more, I don't want to say liberal with their thinking, but just more free thinking on this kind of stuff, where they're more willing to say like, oh yeah, the version of the Bible that we have now is, there's a copyist error there or something like that. So I know that just recently Mike Licona came out with a book called Jesus Contradicted, where he talks specifically about contradictions in the Bible, or sorry, in the gospel narratives. And I'm sure that there's some good stuff in there that I probably have not considered, but I just wanted to get on this because I want to share this with people, and not all of these have to do with the Gospels. These are across the whole Bible. So there's scholars like him, and then he said that Norman Geisler and Thomas Howe back in the day, they had a book called When Critics Ask, but I think it got updated to the Big Book of Bible Difficulties or something like that, where they go through a whole bunch of contradictions, and they're more conservative on it, meaning they're trying to find perfect answers for all of these things. Mike is a little bit more, what's the word? He's just a little bit more loose with it, I guess, where he's not looking for a perfect answer for every single one, and he's okay with a little bit of ambiguity.
Mm-hmm.
And I got to be honest, I'm okay with a little bit of ambiguity too on some of these. And I'm not, on a lot of the contradictions, I'm not really beholden to one answer over the other. I think on several of these, you could have either of the options be the actual answer and it'd be fine.
Right.
So if there's something you think about, or somebody in the comments, if you think about something while we're going through these and you think that I'm wrong about this, or there's a better answer or something, then let me know and I'll research it. And if I think it's better, then I will change what I put on there.
Oh, yeah, and
So with
speaking of
that,
Michael Lacona, he has a really interesting course on logos.
oh, does he?
Yeah, it's objections to the Gospels, and it's
Well, that
really
sounds
really
similar.
good.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he did some kind of work recently that was a real scholarly look into the Gospels and the contradictions within it. But then this book is like a more layman's term
Mm.
version of that, more popular level book. So,
Right.
and man, there's so much stuff out there. I can never
I
read it
know.
all.
I know. When you were saying that, I was like, great, that's another book I got to buy.
Yeah, I know. So let's get started with number one here. And for the first 500 or so, I'm using the numerical system that, or the numbering system that Steve Wells uses on his website. But here's the thing. It's also confusing because the list that I showed you on there is listed by the first occurrence in the Bible. But that's not how these are listed. I think these are how they were listed in the book or something.
Mm.
This is, I'm following, if you want to follow along with these, everybody, the website that I showed, the contradictingBibleContradictions.com, I'm essentially for the first 492 going through that list in order. So you can look at that and see what he says. And then from then on, I kind of changed the numbering up a little bit because there's not a reference for that. But first one here, see what you
Oh,
think.
Julian, real quick, sorry.
Yeah, yeah.
So when he points these out, is he going through and giving explanations, or is he just kind of like throwing hand grenades?
Sometimes, and actually I can pull that up too, just to see what he says. Um, what's what's his name? What Steve says, because some of them he just goes, you know, here's what this says, here's what this says is a contradiction, and sometimes he gives a little bit more explanation. Sometimes he'll link a video in there, and sometimes it's like a Dan
Okay,
McClellan video,
right.
but they don't always have really in-depth explanations because they don't necessarily need to. Here's another thing I have to bring up
Well, if they
actually.
investigated it that thoroughly, they might come to the conclusion that it's not a contradiction.
Right. Well, I would hope so, right? But here we are looking at this website with 500 of them, most of which I think are laughable. Um, there's another thing I forgot to mention. Just because there's an in-depth explanation for a contradiction like this does not mean that we're doing mental gymnastics or something like that. Because you might have a very simple question that needs a very in-depth answer. Like,
Hmm.
I don't know, here's a simple question. What is the doctrine of substitutionary atonement? And that answer is going to be very lengthy and complex. It's not going to be
Hmm.
very super duper simple. You can simplify it down, but you know, if you want to get into detail, you're going to have to write a whole lot of stuff on it. So a lot of these, I have really in-depth answers to them, but that doesn't mean that I'm trying to like work my way around the text and change it to fit my views or whatever. Like some of these need in-depth explanations, even though
Hmm.
they have very simple questions. So, number one, for example, how many men did the chief of David's captains kill? In 2 Samuel, it says, these are the names of David's mighty men. Josheb Bashebeth, the Tachemonite, was chief of the three. He wielded his spear against 800 men, whom he killed at one time. So 800. And then 1 Chronicles 11:11 says, this is the list of David's mighty men. Jashobeam, son of Hachmoni, was chief of the officers. He wielded his spear against 300 men, whom he killed at one time. So we looked at this one actually before the stream, but if you have any thoughts about it, let me know. Ernest,
Yeah,
if you
yeah,
want to.
yeah. I was yeah. My first thought was, is this describing the same event first?
Mm-hmm.
And you know more about this than I do. I didn't, I didn't go deep into this one. I did look to see, if there was anything that jumped out as far as like a response to this one. Um, but I wasn't able to ascertain, are these two verses describing the same um, event, and are these the same people?
So, as far as I can tell, scholars say that these are the same people. So, the whole list of David's mighty men is kind of convoluted. And that's actually another contradiction that we'll get to, like way later in the list. But Josheb, Bashebeth, and Jashobeam are supposedly the same people or the same person. And then you can probably see even in the English that, where was it? The Tachmonite and Hachmoni are kind of similar. So they probably have like the same root or something like that. Or they refer to the same area or something like that.
Mhm.
I don't really know. But as far as we can tell, as far as I can tell, they're the same person.
And it's the claim that the contradiction is, uh, one says three and the other says officers.
No, it's that one says 800 men and the other says 300 men.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, I mean, you could also say that these are just two different occurrences. Like at one time, he wielded his spear against 800 men, and at another time, he wielded his spear against 300 men. That totally could happen.
Yeah, to
If we're
me, the
talking,
contradiction would be he wielded a spear against 800 men versus he didn't wield his spear against anyone. That to me
mm-hmm.
would be a contradiction. But
Yes,
uh, a
yes,
varying of numbers just seems to be, I don't know, it seems like a non-issue in a way.
there's a lot of those. So there's a lot of texts in here that are complementary rather than contradictory. So they will actually work together. Like there are
Mhm.
alleged contradictions in here where the real answer is, well, okay, none of these passages say only this thing happened or only this many, right?
Mm-hmm.
You could have, like, for example, in the gospel narratives, apparently there was, in one gospel, it says that there was one angel at the tomb, and another gospel, it says there's two. Which one is it? Well, the
Mm-hmm.
one that says one doesn't say only one, just it says one. It could be that they're just highlighting, spotlighting one of the angels and leaving the
Mm-hmm.
other one out for whatever reason. We don't know. But
Yeah,
it's not
because to
contradictory.
right, yeah, to
Yeah.
me, like to come across something like this in my mind, I would think, hey, there's something here. I should look deeper into this, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But if you already have your mind made up that you hate the Bible or whatever, you would see this and go, aha, see, I knew it, you know, or whatever.
Yeah.
Um, but to me, it just seems like, hey, I wonder why there's a difference in the numbers. I should look into this, you know.
Yeah.
Um,
So with this one and with a lot of other ones, I'll say I'm relying on people like the guy that wrote this response website and other scholars and things. I didn't come up with these. I think, you know, we have to rely on the research of other people and sometimes take it for granted. We sometimes take it for granted. Um, so this kind of thing, like I can't explain it really in depth, but it seems like a reasonable answer to me that somebody else came up with. So
hmm,
that's what I'm going with. So
hmm,
for this one, for example, what he wrote was, if you look into the Hebrew, the word for officers or captains in the first one, or sorry, in the second one, the Jashabim, he's the chief of the Hasilasim. And then for the first one, Josheb-Bashebeth was the chief of the Hasalasi, which means 3, and then Hasalasim means 30. So on the one hand, you have a guy who's called the chief of the 3. On the other hand, you have a guy who's called the chief of the 30. And so actually, to your point in the beginning, I guess I misstated this, but to your point in the beginning, yeah, they totally could just be different people. Like, sure, that's a possibility, right?
hmm,
We just said if you can show that it's possible that there is no alleged contradiction, or that the contradiction is not the chief, the first option for solving this issue. If you can show that
hmm.
there's a possibility of harmonization, then no big deal. So there's two right
Right,
there. Either they could be different people, or it could be at different times. That's actually just one I came up with on the spot. Like I didn't even think
right,
about that before. They totally
right.
totally could have just been at different times.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, because honestly,
Mm.
it
Here's
doesn't
another thing.
bother me to have, it doesn't bother me to have, these types of things, pointed out to me because I just kind
Right.
of see it as like, hey, thanks for pointing that out to me. It's something I get to look into, um, you know, but I also don't want to like, I also wouldn't want to give the impression that I'm, uh, kind of like the Dawa guys where it's like, you know, you could point out something that just like totally obliterates their argument, but somehow they sidestep it, and I just wouldn't want to appear as like a sidestepper or a deflector or something like that if I'm trying to actually like make an appeal,
Right.
to someone, so I guess like to give somebody like the benefit of the doubt or whatever, maybe the sticking point is the part where it says whom he killed at one time, because it says it at the end of both verses, you
Mm-hmm.
know, but that doesn't necessarily mean at the same time, you know,
Right.
like just
Yes. It
because
could be
just
two
because
different one
800,
times.
right, exactly. Like
Yeah.
there's lots of times in a day,
Yeah.
um
Also, your brother in Christ says idiom meaning many. So either of these could just be an idiom meaning he killed many people. They could be
right,
referring to the same event, and maybe for whatever reason, one of them says 800, one says 300.
right,
But like I said, this is about how literal you take it. So Steve takes it in a like hyper literal sense. Um, I'll find the poster too, and maybe I'll have that prepared for next live stream. But on the bottom of the poster, it talks about taking a literal interpretation of the Bible, but
mm,
they mean like super hyper literal translation. Like you cannot have any metaphor whatsoever. It has to be literal, which I
mm.
think is obtuse.
Yeah, I mean basically the 800 or 300, you know, um is the number really that? what is the message that they're trying to convey?
Yes,
There was
yes.
a lot of
That's
people
why
that were killed at one time, is what they're trying to say.
I know Inspiring Philosophy said this recently because I watched the stream where he was talking, I think to Mike Lacona or maybe someone else about contradictions. And he said he doesn't really like using the word inerrant anymore because it kind of has a stigma. He uses like infallible or
Mm,
reliable or something like
mm,
that, where I like that a lot better because I'm worried about the message of the Bible. We don't take the Muslim track where we say it's preserved in every single jot and tittle, like they
mm.
say. We don't have to take that because God can still work through fallible humans and get his message through. He
Right,
doesn't need to dumb it down for us where he says it has to be, every single jot and tittle the same because I can't trust you guys to write my words,
right.
something like that. So I like using the word infallible. I think reliable is fine. And that's what I aim to show with
Mm.
these live streams, that it
Well,
is reliable.
right, right.
For the
And
interest
on,
in the interest of time, I'm going to keep moving because we've been
okay,
through one. I I
okay,
was I was saying in a live stream I'd like to go through 10,
okay.
or if we run out of time, fine. Um,
Time
even in
flies when you're having fun, right?
No, it's so much fun. I like talking to you, man.
Well,
If we
you
go through
know,
10 per live stream, it's 60 live streams, so that's still a lot.
and it's funny on that previous one, and when I was looking through like some of the commentaries, I'm actually surprised that they didn't pick at something else, that number 30
Mm,
in one of those
mm-hmm,
verses, because they
mm-hmm.
referred to that group of 30, even though later the number actually there was additional people that came into that group of 30, but it was still referred to as the group of 30. So I'm
We're
actually
we're just on
surprised that
number
they.
one. That'll come up later. We're just on number
Oh,
one.
okay, okay.
The way that this was originally put together, it's not by book, it's not topical, it's not alphabetical, it's some random order. So I'm sorry, it might be a follow-up to this might be contradiction number 472. I don't really remember, but we're
Oh,
just gonna steam
I see it in the
gonna
notes. Did
steamroll
you
through them.
did you
Oh,
mention that and I missed it?
uh,
I see it in the notes. You've got
maybe I did. I don't know. I didn't mention this to the
Hasalasim.
the people listening. Yeah, I did do that. Um, huh.
Sorry if I
Actually, your
missed that
your
part.
brother in Christ says I could join the stream. If you're talking about this stream, sure, I'm okay with that. I've seen your stuff. I like your stuff. But I forgot to mention this. In the description, there's a link that says full list of contradictions, and that is the full list that I've gone through in order. So you can at least look at the questions. You can, it's a PDF, so it's searchable, so you should be able to look up keywords. If you're looking for specific ones, you might find them in there. And then you can stick around while we try and answer them. So, um, yeah. Let's see. Your brother in Christ. I'm not sure how exactly to get the link to you if you want to join this stream, but I'd like to if that's something you want to do. So for number 2, was Abraham justified by faith or works? We talked about this beforehand too,
Mhm.
just to kind of wet the palate. But Romans 4:2 says, if Abraham was indeed justified by works, he had something to boast about, but not before God. And then James 2:21 says, was not our father Abraham justified by what he did when he offered his son Isaac on the altar? Here's another thing that I forgot to mention. First live stream, sorry about that. All of the contradictions that Steve brings up are in the King James. For the most part, I'm using the Berean Standard Bible, the BSB. It's one that I've liked for a little while. If you look on Bible Hub, it's like their default translation. I just enjoy it. It's a more modern translation. If you look at a lot of modern translations, they actually fix some of the problems that are brought up on this website because the King James English is just older. Sometimes we mess up things because we're looking at it with a 21st century lens. So I like a lot of more modern translations, and I used them for the quotes here. And you'll see with some of them that a translation like this has fixed the problem. And so there's not even a contradiction on the surface level, but we'll get there. He's saying, Ernest, you could send it to him. So
Oh yeah. What do I need to do?
the link that I sent you, if you still have it, you can send it to him.
Oh,
He
send
should
it
be able to
down.
just jump
Sure.
in. Yeah. So,
Um, let's
all
see.
right. So if Abraham was justified by works, or if he's not justified by works, then what the heck is going on with Isaac? Well, what I talked about earlier when we talked was your faith is completed by your works, if that's the right word to use. James, I think, is the one that also says your faith without works is dead. If you have faith but you don't have works, it's dead. Not meaning that your works get you to heaven, but like if you claim to have faith in God but you're not doing anything about it, then your faith, you probably didn't have faith in the first place.
Mm.
And so he talks about the patriarchs. And also, if you look in Hebrews, this fixes the problem. If you just read the other books of the Bible, talking about the faith of the patriarchs, it's got to be Hebrews 11, I think, 10 or 11, where they do all these things, they do these works that God tells them to do, but it's because they have faith in God that they go and do those things. So the justification that they have through God or before God is not chiefly because of the works that they do, but it's the underlying faith. It's just
Mm.
through those works that that faith is essentially proven.
Right.
And then something I said earlier was also that it could just be that he's justified before men and not justified before God. Through his, he's justified before men because his work shows that he has faith in God, so men can look at him and go, oh, okay, his faith is real. That's what I mean by justification before men.
Mm.
Justification, for anybody that doesn't know, means declared righteous. So in order for someone to be declared righteous before God, it's not going to be by works. It's going to be by faith. The Bible makes that clear. But if you're calling someone righteous, like if I say to you, Ernest, hey, I think you're a righteous person, I'm declaring you righteous, you're justified in my eyes, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that could totally be what's going on here, where he did this work partially to show that he had faith in God, partially to show to other people that he does have faith in God and therefore is justified in their eyes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's also
Right.
kind of solved by just basic Christian theology. You don't have to dive real deep for that one. It's like, yeah, faith is what saves you, or the blood of Christ is what saves you, but it's through your faith and it's not by works, and we know that.
Right. Well,
Big
and
whoop.
and it seems like the distinction is having something to boast about. So you know
Mm-hmm.
it's
Yes.
so just because he was justified by what he did doesn't mean that he has something to boast about.
Right. Right. And that's why it says not before God. That's kind of the
Right.
point I was making with being justified before men. He could boast before men, like, hey, look how righteous I am. It could happen, but not before God. No. Okay. I don't see anything from your brother in Christ yet, so I'm going to keep moving. Number 3, how many sons did Abraham have? Genesis 22:2. By the way, I have simplified a lot of these because Steve will bring up a lot of verses for reference for each of these points, but you can take one of the verses and make the point. So, for example, the first half here has another verse in Hebrews. Second half here has 2 other verses that he brings up. I'm just not going to fit them all on one slide. Sorry about that. But here we go. Genesis 22. Take your son, God said, your only son Isaac, whom you love, and go to the land of Moriah. Offer him there as a burnt offering. Genesis 25, 1 through 2 shows that Abraham had another wife named Keturah, and she bore him Zimran, Jokshan, Medan, Midian, Ishbak, and Shua. And then Genesis 16, Hagar obviously bore Abram the son, Ishmael. So on the surface, what do you think about these ones? Or this one, I should say. Do you think it's a contradiction? What do you think?
Sorry, I was
Oh, you're
texting.
sending this stuff to him. Sorry about that.
Sorry. Um, you want to talk about it while I catch up?
Sure. You want me to say it again?
Go ahead and say your take, and I'll read and catch
Oh,
up.
well, I was going to ask you what you thought first before I said
Uh
what my take is.
oh. Oh.
So, okay, I'll summarize real quick. The first one is saying it's your only son, Isaac. The second two are saying, well, Abraham had another wife and had a bunch of sons through her, and then he also had Ishmael through Hagar.
Right.
So,
Right.
what's going on here? Come on,
Yeah.
Christians. You should
Right.
know
Yeah. I
this.
mean, I I kind of zero in on the "your only son"
Mm-hmm.
and 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 I've seen it. I've seen some Heiser uh, videos
Yeah,
on monogenes,
monogenes. Yeah.
and I've
Can you
seen
explain
where
that? Can you explain that for anybody that doesn't know?
honestly, honestly, not very good. I mean,
Okay.
I think the original understanding was that it was monogenes, but then there's a depending on where I think you put the break in the
Mm-hmm.
words,
Yes.
it means unique or
Right.
one of a kind.
I know that
So
I know that Heiser talks about it at least with regard to Jesus, because the
right.
word monogenes, well, they thought that it came from two certain roots, and he was saying that it's actually from a different root. And
Mm,
so the, I guess, traditional route is to say that it means only son, um, or only begotten son or something like that. But he is saying, no, it actually means unique son.
right.
And he uses that to say, you've got angels in the Old Testament being called sons of God, but Jesus is also called a son of God. And humans are also called sons and daughters of God. So what's up with Jesus? Well, he's not just the only begotten son of God, he's the unique son of God.
Mm, right. Right.
He's, for
And
lack of a better word, he's the same species as God.
and it
And so
kind of
you have
comes
a similar, sorry, you have a similar
like
thing going on here. So go ahead.
right, right. So it's kind of like what you talked about earlier with the as far as contradictions, you have to look at the context. So based on the
Mm,
context, well, we know that Isaac wasn't his only son. So it makes sense in light of unique. Unique may be a better translation,
right.
or one of a kind son. Unique son, one of a kind son, because he was his one of a kind son.
Yes.
Um,
Yes. I think
so
if you take it from a chronological standpoint, then the first one of the second, or the first one, how should I say this? The one in Genesis 25 evaporates, because you can just say in Genesis 22, he is the only uh, unique son, and the other ones haven't even been born yet, so they're not even in the picture, right? But
mhm,
with um, Isaac and Ishmael, then you go with what you just said, where
mm,
he's the unique son.
mm.
We got Eric coming in here.
Okay.
It crashed my party.
Hello.
Nice. Hey,
Yeah,
we
just
got a
jumped on
pro.
the part. It crashed the party.
We got a pro
Awesome.
with
I
us.
love it. Party
Nope, just a
crasher.
beggar telling other beggars where the bread is. That's
Yes.
about it.
I've been wanting to say this for a while. I love your background.
I blame my wife.
Is that a wallpaper? Or is that hand, don't tell me that's like hand painted or something. Or a
No,
stencil or something like
this
that.
is actually banner material.
Huh.
Oh, nice.
I
It's
Very
have
a
nice.
wondered. I'm glad you asked, Julian. I've always wondered
Yeah.
the step and repeat.
Well, since you just joined, I'll put you on the spot. What do you think about this one?
let's see. I don't know because I was setting up, so I wasn't listening.
Okay, so I'll explain it real quick. Genesis 22 says, "Take your only son Isaac and, give him up as offering and all that." Genesis 25 lists out the other sons of Abraham that he had through Keturah, and then Genesis 26 says obviously that he had Ishmael through Hagar. So is this a contradiction?
Well, the
That's the
only one that
question.
would be contradiction even then, because again, this was just his firstborn son. He hadn't had anyone else past this.
Right.
So the only one would be Hagar's
Right.
son there, and that
Yes.
is, according to the Lord, illegitimate.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
that's an
Oh, I didn't even say that
illegitimate
yet.
son. So
Yes.
no, it wouldn't be his son. He wouldn't be included as part of that to begin with. So no, this
Right.
wouldn't be a contradiction.
Right.
It would just be when exactly are you looking at this? And at least this is all from the same book, for pity's sakes. So,
Oh, it
and
gets much worse. There's ones later on that are from the same paragraph. Oh, it gets
well,
bad.
at least it'll be at least some of the same context. You
Yes.
got to remember why these books were written. It's not like the Quran, which is one book.
Right.
We're looking at multiple books with multiple different types of writing styles.
Yes. Yes, you're
So,
right. And it's not like the Quran where it's gatherings of topical stuff. I mean, there is examples of that in like um I think it's Matthew or Mark, I can't remember which one, where he kind of talks about things more topically in the gospel narratives. But you have plenty of the Old Testament, which is just like straight, here's a history of what happened. and it's verse after verse. You read this whole story and it goes along and it makes a lot of sense. So you can't just break it up into little pieces and claim that there's a contradiction.
Well, it's also telling too, like with Genesis 22, verse 2, where it says, take your son, God said, your only son, Isaac. I mean, to me, that implies that God isn't even thinking
Acknowledging
about,
Ishmael.
yeah, he's not even acknowledging him as a legitimate son.
Yeah.
So, if this is God talking, it seems like
Good point.
he's pointing out that that Ishmael doesn't count as far as like the covenant. So
And now you've made all the Muslims mad.
That's okay. Oh yeah, I was actually just gonna say this. Isaac is the only son from the promises of becoming one in marriage. Yeah, he's the son of the promise.
right.
Hagar does not have that promise. Good job.
Yep.
Good job, Whitfield. Whitfield Grove. That's a great name. Sounds like a cowboy name. Love it. All right. Well, with that, let's move on. Was Abiathar the father or the son of Ahimelech? In 1 Samuel 22, it says, but one of the sons of Ahimelech, son of Ahitub, escaped. His name was Abiathar, and he fled to David. This is, there's a slaughtering of sons, and he escaped. And then in 2 Samuel 8, Zadok, son of Ahitub, and Ahimelech, son of Abiathar, were priests. So, ooh, on the one hand, he's the father, and on the other hand, he's the son of Ahimelech. This is one of those that on the face of it, if you have no other context, it straight up just looks like a contradiction.
Why? I'm sorry.
Why?
Sorry. Why would this be a contradiction?
Oh, just because
all.
on one hand it says, Abiathar, father of Ahimelech, and then Abiathar, son of Ahimelech. Like, if you just look at it isolated like that.
I've done enough genealogy to know that family names is a thing.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
I mean, if you have your head in the ground, maybe this becomes off as a contradiction. But I mean, seriously, I know even in my family line, there is a father who's named after a son who's named after father. And then again, that repeats like 4 or 5 times.
Yes.
Whenever going through genealogy, that's a pain in the rear end because they all have the same last name. They all have the same first name, and they didn't have middle names at the time.
My goodness.
So,
gosh.
Yeah.
It
wouldn't look like contradiction to me unless they're making other claims as well.
You might laugh at this, but I'm literally pulling these from the Skeptic's Annotated Bible website, and this is not like some podunk little book that somebody made and nobody touched. This is supported by and endorsed by Sam Harris, Michael Shermer, Peter Boghossian, and a few other people who I can't remember right now, like top atheists. Peter Boghossian says he keeps it on his desk. It's the only book he keeps on his desk, and it's got this stuff in it. Ugh. Yeah, there's 3 suggested solutions to this, and the first one is just that there's multiple people with the same name. Wow. Imagine that.
I don't know how many Davids I know. I stopped counting.
Yeah, good point. There's another option on here that suggests there's a copyist error. That gets thrown around a lot. I don't think that there's going to be a copyist error here. Somebody suggested it somewhere online, so I put it in here, but I really think it's just multiple people that have the same name. Not a big deal. There's also,
I mean,
there's another one.
At least this isn't as bad as the Quran.
Yeah, that's
claiming
true.
that Mary is the mother of Jesus, is the sister of Aaron.
Yes. Man.
So yeah, bit of an issue with that. Obviously, Muhammad didn't realize
Tiny.
more than one person could be named the same.
Tiny issue, just tiny issue. We'll forget about it. Who knows? Maybe it's been abrogated by now.
I hope so. They gotta cover up somehow.
Yeah. All right, number 5. Who is Abijam's mother? I gotta be honest. A lot of these are gonna be kind of the same thing. In the 18th year of the reign of Jeroboam, son of Nebat, Abijam became king of Judah. His mother's name was Maacah. And then in the next one, it says his mother's name was Micaiah, daughter of Uriel. And then, Maacah, daughter of Abishalom, and then Micaiah, daughter of Uriel. So, big faith shaking contradiction here.
Again, yeah, that doesn't change anything about Christian doctrine at all.
Yeah. Abijah, In the second verse here, Abijah is a variant of Abijam, and Makkah is a variant of Micaiah.
Huh. Almost like we don't have those sort of variants now.
Yes. And also to clear up the thing about Abishalom and Uriel, I have here Abijah's mother is Micaiah, whose parents are Uriel and his wife Tamar. The reason that 1 Kings calls Micaiah the daughter of Absalom or Abishalom is the same reason Jesus is called the son of David, because the same word that's used for a direct one generation lineage difference, son or daughter, can be used for 2, 3, 10, 15 generations. It's the same word. So son is the same word as grandson, is the same word as great, 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 great grandson. So
it just means
called,
in the line of.
Yes.
Where,
yes.
Of course, that doesn't work with the Quran because it's saying that she's directly his sister. But
no, I can't help you there, buddy.
I digress on that one.
Quran's not my book.
Nope, but I know that at least one Muslim would try to point that out.
Yeah.
We're being unfair. No, there's direct genealogy. That matters.
Uh-huh. This makes me think of one that's going to come up eventually where, I kid you not, I think it's Proverbs 25:5 and 25:4 are alleged contradictions. Because one says, answer not a fool according to his folly, and the other one says, answer a fool according to his folly. And they're back-to-back verses. But it's on the website. It's on the website. I'm not making this stuff up, people. All right, how were Abijam and Asa related? So more of this stuff with Abijam. His son Asa, so either their father and son Abijam and Asa, or Abijam became king of Judah, and his mother's name is Makkah. Wait, what's going on here? Oh, I didn't include the second verse. Sorry. Oh, Asa is said to be Abijam's son, yet they both have Makkah as a mother, so it's a contradiction. But it's the same. It's the same thing where the same word is used as for son and grandson. So Asa is the son of Abijah or Abijam, and the grandson of Makkah. Pretty simple.
Sometimes
these are
sometimes the names. Sometimes when there's a name inserted that might not make sense, sometimes it's because there's another message that's being relayed based on the meaning of the name.
Yeah. Can you give me an example off the top of your head?
I mean, Peter comes to mind, but I've seen I've seen some lineages. What's the guy's name? He broke down the meanings of the names in the Old Testament in Genesis.
Oh, that was Mike Winger talking about Genesis 5, if that's the one you're thinking of.
I think it's Chuck
Chuck Missler.
Missler.
Yeah, Mike got it from Chuck Missler. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it's really interesting because he broke down the meaning of the names, and it basically told the story of the gospel through the meaning of the names.
Yes.
And I think that was another thing too, because I think that there's something about the lineage where there's like maybe gaps in it, but when you read into it and you look at the meaning of the names, you realize the purpose wasn't to give us a lineage. The purpose was to tell us, it was basically like a coded message,
Mm-hmm. You know what? I'm going to pull this up because I think this is cool, and I'm just going to show everybody so we can have a break from these ridiculous Bible contradictions. Share screen. This is from Chuck Missler. This has been kind of floating around for years. This article was written in 2000, so it shows you how old it is. But this is an answer to somebody who's asking what's his reasoning here. He's saying that if you take this lineage from Adam to Noah, down to Noah, these are all legitimate readings of each word. You get a basic gospel message with the meanings of their words, of their names. So Adam,
it was like the Hebrew symbol, like the there's some type of symbolism that goes along with each of the Hebrew words. sorry, and then there's the symbols are like translated, but you might be able to explain it better now.
Well, I'm honestly just going to read the article. Adam means man. Of course, it can mean like ruddy or red as well, but it typically means man. Seth means appointed. So when Eve had Seth, she said, God has appointed me another seed instead of Abel. So man appointed. Enosh can mean mortal, frail, or miserable. It's from the root anash, meaning to be incurable. And then
His parents
Kenan.
must not have liked him very much.
Oh, no. No, definitely not. Ichabod is another name that comes to mind. I forget what it means, but, named for essentially sorrow. Oh, speaking of sorrow, Kenan. Sorrow, dirge, or elegy. That's what Kenan can mean. And like I said, all of these, this is not the translation for each of these names. They're just legitimate translations. So, or meanings, I should say. Mahalalel, did I say that right? Mahalalel means blessed or praise. So, and since El is the name of God, Mahalalel means the blessed God. Jared means shall come down. Apparently this was a allusion to the sons of God who came down to corrupt the daughters of men, resulting in the Nephilim. If you know Michael Heiser, you know what he's talking about there. Enoch, Jared's son Enoch means teaching or commencement. And then Methuselah, he was the last person alive before the flood, and then when he died, the flood came, right? So it is interesting that his life, right? Yes, his life was in effect the symbol of God's mercy in forestalling the coming judgment of the flood, and then the flood was sent forth. So, yeah, the name Methuselah comes from the two roots mut, meaning death, and shalach, meaning to bring. So, his death shall bring, or to send forth death. Lamech means lament or lamentation, or despairing. And then Noah means to bring relief or comfort. So if you put them all together, these are legitimate translations of these names. Man appointed mortal sorrow. The blessed God shall come down, teaching his death shall bring the despairing rest or comfort.
It's beautiful.
Mankind is appointed death, right? And we're sorrowful for it. And then God's going to come down, teaching that his death, God's death, will bring comfort to those who are despairing. That's in Genesis 5. Yeah, I know. Woohoo!
Yeah.
Cool stuff. All right.
It is. Thanks for doing that little sidebar.
Yeah, I thought that was so cool when I first saw it. So happy to share. Let's see, back to the slides. Okay. Oh, we did this one. Okay, here's an interesting one. How long was the Ark of the Covenant at Abinadab's house? So the men of Kiriath Jearim came for the Ark of the Lord and took it to Abinadab's house on the hill. They consecrated Eleazar to guard it, and from that day a long time passed, 20 years in all, as the Ark remained at Kiriath Jearim. And then you got, in 2 Samuel, and he and all his troops set out for Baal of Judah to bring up from there the Ark of God, which is called by the name of the Lord of hosts, who is enthroned between the cherubim that are on it. They set the Ark of God on a new cart and brought it from the house of Abinadab, which was on the hill. Uzzah and Ahio, the sons of Abinadab, were guiding the new cart. Then the people asked for a king, and God gave them 40 years under Saul, son of Kish, from the tribe of Benjamin. So the contradiction that's being proposed here is... This honestly takes a little bit of reading to get. So in 1 Samuel 7, the ark remained at Abinadab's house for 20 years. That's what we just read in the first one. But in Acts, it tells us that Saul reigned for 40 years, and David took the ark from Abinadab's house after Saul was no longer king. So on the one hand, it says that it was there for 20 years, and on the other, it says that it was there for at least 40 years while Saul reigned. Any thoughts?
Well, you have to get to 20 years before you can get to 40.
Yeah, but it does say 20 years in all.
Now, 40 years is just used as an idiom for a very long time. in a lot of references.
Hmm.
Because 40
You're saying like it's
years
a
comes
number
up
of.
a lot.
You're saying like it's a number of completion or something like that.
Not so much number of completion, just a phrase that's used to in the Bible to say it's been a long time. It was there for a long time. Again, you got to look at the context of Acts. The context of Acts is not a measurement of a historical document. It's saying, hey, remember back when he was there for such a long time and then brought back? Well, here we go, and then dives in further after that. Where you have First and Second Samuel are more historically based, so they would be closer to the time period. And again, the question is, how do they actually measure years?
Oh, that's
just
a good
like
question.
how they measure days.
Right. We don't have to get that in depth to resolve this one, actually. And Ernest, you touched on this. I think you were actually right on this, because I got to be honest, it's been a while since I looked at this one, so sorry about that. But it simply says that 20 years passed while it was at his house, but it doesn't say immediately that it left after that point. It just says that the ark remained there for 20 years.
Yeah, I was curious because I was looking in the follow-up verses, and it doesn't say where it's at.
Yeah, you should do that. Read the context.
Right. I mean, it says in the first verse, it's 20 years in all at this place. But then I was looking, well, where, because it says that it's they set the ark of God on a new cart and brought it from his house
on
a hill. So, but then it says later that it was 40 years. So it just seems like, are we talking about multiple places? You know?
So what I have written here is the time period of 20 years is between the ark arriving there at Abinadab's house and then Samuel admonishing Israel about the idols. Because if I remember correctly, that's what happens immediately in 1 Samuel 7. And this simply just doesn't have anything to do with the ark being there for a specified amount of time. It just says the ark was put there, and then as it remained there, 20 years passed, and then this next thing happened. So in all, the ark was actually at his house for at least 60 years. Because you have 20 years pass, and then essentially Saul becomes king. Then it remains there while he's king. Then it's removed in David's time. So at least 60 years. Yeah.
Yeah, interesting. I mean, if anything, it's like they're faulting the Bible for providing too much detail.
Yes. Yeah, you're right.
It's like they tried to be clear, they tried to provide as much information in the one part, then they provide all of these details on the other part, and they're like, oh, they're not the same details. It's like, well,
And sometimes they will ask for a level of scrutiny or a level of detail that the Bible is just not simply interested in giving. So they'll ask for explanations like it's a scientific document, like like it's some kind of dissertation or something. But this is just a history, and the important parts are not about how long the ark was at somebody's house. The important parts are about the salvation of the entire world through the people of Israel and through Christ. Right. And so a lot of these details kind of just get tossed to the side because they're just not important.
Right. Which is why, for the most part, I've never heard of these so-called contradictions, because it seems like it's so far in the weeds of the whole point of the gospel.
Yes. Well,
or getting
so
to know
the people making these points. They're very far in the weeds.
Right. I mean, it's like the Bible is it's a way for us to learn about our Creator and His purpose for us, and so to focus on all these tiny little things like there's some type of gotcha, just when I'm kind of scratching my head trying to find out, well, what is the gotcha?
Yes.
Where exactly is this gotcha?
If a atheist or a skeptic or whatever brings one of these up in a conversation, or if you see it on a website like this, I think typically the point is to show, one, that the Bible is not inerrant, and two, that you probably shouldn't trust it. And Steve says as much in that article that I showed you, where he says, this is concerning because 2 billion people follow the Bible. So, implying that people shouldn't do that. But you look at any individual one of these, And is it really meant to break your faith? Like, if I can't figure out exactly how long the ark was at Abinadab's house, am I going to reject Christ?
Right.
Am I really going to do that? Am I really going to stake it on that? No. That's why everybody cares about the Gospels and the resurrection narrative so much. That's like way more important than this kind of stuff.
Right. Well, I wonder if they use that same, as far as like being intellectually honest, do they use that same type of scrutiny in other aspects of their lives,
No, they don't. They don't look at other historical books even with that level of scrutiny. I will make a video on this eventually, but I looked up... Actually, no, one of the contradictions I have later on, I talk about this. I looked up 4 different narratives of the Titanic from 4 different perspectives, and they contradict on major details. But everybody knows the Titanic sank. So,
right.
Yeah.
Well, just recently in the last couple of years, and I won't say the thing because YouTube is censors heavily. But as far as like Fauci said some things that contradicted. He contradicted himself numerous times. But did they go along with the CDC's recommendations on things? Are they still...
Now we're gonna get a banner below the video.
Right? Are they still wearing a mask? As they're pointing out contradictions in the Bible.
No.
I think YouTube stopped doing that.
Oh,
I haven't
good.
seen one of those in a long time.
I saw a lady walking in the neighborhood the other day outside by herself wearing a mask. Anyway.
Yeah,
well, contradictions.
It's better, I guess, than riding in your car by yourself with a mask.
I guess. How old was Abram when Ishmael was born? Genesis 16 says Abram was 86 when Ishmael was born. Acts 7, though, this is Stephen talking. He says, the glory of God appeared to our father Abraham when he was still in Mesopotamia, before he lived in Haran, and told him to leave your country and go to your kindred, and go to the land I will show you. Or sorry, leave your country and your kindred, and go to the land I will show you. So he left the land of the Chaldeans and settled in Haran. After his father died, God brought him out of that place. So Terah, his father, died, and then he left. When Terah was 70 years old, he became the father of Abram, Nahor, and Haran. And then when Terah died, he was 205. So obviously, if he became the father of Abram at 70, and then he died at 205, Abram left when he was what? 135? So he couldn't have had Ishmael at 86. So, boom, contradiction. Got him. Close it up. Close up shop.
Right.
They figured it out. We've been got. We got.
Yeah, I'm going to go back to Lost Ernest on that one.
Nice. Any thoughts on this one? What do you think?
It seems like a complicated math problem here.
It's a little complicated, but it is. I think the answer is in the text. You don't have to really go outside of it. Here's a hint. Did Terah have all 3 of his sons in the same year?
That's what I'm looking at. I mean, unless he has 3 wives, that's not really...
When he was 70 years old, he became the father of Abraham, Nahor, and Haran.
Trying to do the math in my head. 9 months recovery time. No,
it's not happening. So
nope.
Maybe
in best case scenario,
when he was 70 years old, he started becoming a father. Now here's a question: why is Abraham listed first?
Now, there's 2 options. Either he's the most important, which, of course, to his narrative, he would be the most important, or he's the oldest.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
because
those
he
are the
could
2
still
options.
be the youngest, but yet
Right.
most important to the narrative. So he, of course, would be first.
And so here's a question. What happens directly after that? We have the end of Genesis 11 here. It actually ends with verse 32 there. Terah lived 205 years, and then he died in Haran. Immediately, you go to the story of Abram. So I think that lends it to being Abram is listed first because he's the most important, and the next story is about him. So Nahor or Haran, or both of them, are older than Abram. One of them was born when Terah was 70. He started becoming a father when he was 70 years old. And for the sake of space, maybe, they listed all 3 sons right there. But then sometime later, Terah had Abram.
Yeah, I don't understand. Maybe maybe the critics are just like so much smarter than me that I just can't figure this out. But if the question is how old was Abram when Ishmael was born,
Well, it says
it
it in,
says it says in Genesis.
yeah, it
Like,
says in
doesn't
86.
Genesis answer that question? So then where does the supplemental verses contradict?
That's
Well, I
exactly,
think
you said it exactly right. They're supplemental verses. They're not contradictory verses.
I'm thinking they're also assuming that he waited until he died and then left. Is that what they're
Yeah.
assuming?
Well, it says after his father died, God brought him out of that place. So I would think that would be correct. That'd be a correct assumption. But even
So,
still, with that, that doesn't mean that we have a contradiction here because of the things that we had just said.
again, that would be extremely odd for him to have all 3 of his sons, even if he had 3 wives.
Right.
In order to
All in the
have
same
3
year.
sons in the same year,
Yeah.
to have all 3 sons in the exact same year, and then that's it.
Mm-hmm.
Done.
What I have here from that website I mentioned was that the guy said Abraham was the youngest born when Terah was 130, and I gotta be honest, I don't remember where he gets that from, but if you look up number 8 on the Contradicting Bible Contradictions website, you can see his reasoning there. So as long as we show that there's a possibility of harmonization here, then there's not a contradiction, and we've already shown that, so it's not really a big deal. All right, number 9.
Yeah, it was almost like one of those word problems, like a math problem that has like extraneous information that just kind of is like to get you off of the path of finding the answer,
Yes, it's a red
like
herring.
that last verse. I'm kind of thinking like, well, what does that have to do? What does that have to do with anything? Why would that be included? But
Yeah.
anyway.
How many sons did Absalom have? 2 Samuel 14 says 3 sons were born to Absalom and a daughter named Tamar, who was a beautiful woman. 2 Samuel 18 says during his lifetime, Absalom had set up for himself a pillar in the king's valley, for he had said, I have no son to preserve the memory of my name. So he gave the pillar his name, and to this day it is called Absalom's monument. All right, now we throw in the towel. Now they've really exposed us. What do you guys think?
I have no son to precede my. So again, knowing history, I mean, what is it, King Louis? I forget the
Which number?
King of England, the one who cut off all the wives' heads. Well, not all the wives' heads, 2 wives.
Is that Henry?
Wait, known for it. How many sons did he have?
A lot.
Even though, actually, not that many. I think he only
he?
had 1 to memory, which died very early. So sons to pass on his name? Not really. That's the criteria, right?
Mm-hmm.
No sons to preserve the memory of my name. Now, that could be 2 things. That could either be his family referring to being passed down, or naming a son after himself.
Mm-hmm.
So I got 2 possible explanations there. On top of that, was this done before his sons? I'm thinking not.
Yeah, like based on what Elle is saying,
that would be what it is.
I'm leaning towards 3.
Actually, 2 or 3.
Yeah, I'm thinking because that's my thought is like he's not saying he doesn't have any sons, period. He's saying he doesn't have any sons to preserve the memory of his name. So it's like he doesn't have any heirs that he wants to pass, his name onto. It's kind of like what we had talked about with Ishmael, how God was basically rejecting Ishmael, and he was only focusing on the son Isaac. Seems to be kind of in the same.
Oh, go ahead.
No, that's all. I was just saying it seems to be kind of in the same vein, but I mean,
yeah,
I'm not that familiar with this story.
The vast majority of Bible commentators say it's number 2, that his sons had died before that point.
That would make the most sense to me.
We don't really know. So the context would make it say, then I have no surviving sons to preserve the memory of my name.
Mm-hmm.
But it's totally possible that they just were unworthy or unfit to carry on the kingship, and so the memory of his name being preserved as king is just not going to happen.
Right.
So that's
So
fine.
this is Absalom, though, right?
This is Absalom. Yes.
So King David's son,
Right.
the one that rebelled against his daddy in order to take over the
Yes.
kingdom.
Yes.
Yeah, I could very easily see him saying, "Yeah, I have no sons worth a crap."
Right. Yeah.
I mean, he's already shown he's got like 0 family value.
Mm-hmm. Good point.
So,
all right. So
Yeah, I mean, because both of those seem super simple, so simple that I'm surprised that it would rise to the level of a contradiction.
yeah, and
I don't
even
I
the
think.
mean,
three
people
sons,
die.
3 sons being born,
Yeah. People
and
die.
the
Yeah.
death rate of young infant level young children of that time period was quite high.
Mhm.
So it would not be a
Mm-hmm.
stretch to say all his died. They did.
Especially, especially sons of a king.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
the
Sons of a
sons of a
king who
rebelling
rebelled.
king.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah,
There's tension there too. Most of these, like I've already said, are not really contradictions, and they're not even like good arguments, or it's not even good to bring them up really, because you could just easily solve them. But there are some on here that are faith shakers for some people. There's some
Mm.
later on that I've concluded that are ones that Bart Ehrman included in his book Misquoting Jesus. So those definitely have had an impact on a lot of people's lives.
Sure.
So we'll get to those kinds later, but it seems
Well, I
to
mean,
it seems
I
that we're
think all
starting
of
out
them.
with a lot of the milk toast ones.
Well, I mean, I think they all have at least some kind of merit. I mean, they deserve a response, I guess.
I think, yes, I think they deserve a response because nobody wants to do the work to answer like tons and tons and tons of contradictions, because I get it. It's frustrating and tedious and like, yeah, I get it. But if there's a response out there, then the idea is maybe that these will go away because people will stop using bad arguments.
Mhm.
well, again, I've been in a lot of discussions with atheists and Muslims, and I've not. I mean, they throw around the name Bart Ehrman, but that's about it. Right? They
Yeah,
don't
that's about
actually
it.
use any of these arguments here. I've yet to have anyone pull up these verses and say,
No.
"See, here's a contradiction. How many sons did he have?"
This is not a quality argument. This is a
I would,
quantity argument.
yeah, I'd
So,
say this is filler, so he can get up to that
yes.
certain number he wants to make
Yes,
it.
because
Oh my goodness, there's so many errors in the Bible. It's like, yeah, until you actually look at them.
that's exactly the reason, because they will say there's 500 or 10,000 or whatever, make up a number, and no one is ever going to look at all of them. Well,
Mhm.
some people will, but the vast majority of people will never look at them all. And so it sounds really convincing. Oh my gosh, there's 500 things in the Bible that are contradictory that I never even realized in, the times that I read it. Man, like, how can I
Mhm.
trust that thing? Then you
Well,
look at them and you got stuff like this.
like if someone were to hit you with one of these, and you were to say, if I give you a really great answer, will you give your life to Christ? It's
Yeah,
like,
they're not going to stake it on that.
no.
They'd throw it
Or
away
or how about
instantly.
if you hit me with 10 of these, 20, 50, 500, you know what I mean?
Right,
Like
right.
it almost doesn't matter. It
Yeah,
doesn't matter how good the response is.
it does
They'll
not.
just they'll add to the list. They'll find
Yes.
something else. And
So a way to cut through that, I recommend anybody that's listening, if you want to cut through all the crud in all this and get to legit arguments, you say, what is your best example? Give me your best example of a contradiction. Because if I come back and answer that and have a legit answer for that, you have to throw away all the other ones, because this is your best example. This is the best you got. Nothing
mhm,
else is going to beat it. And then you put them on their back foot and you say, well, if this is your best example and it has a reasonable answer to it, maybe you should start looking at this with not such a critical eye and actually treat it like you do every other ancient text.
right.
Then you get past the quantity argument.
Sure. No, that's a good one.
it was my idea to go through about 10 per stream, and we're tracking pretty well. So I'm going to do this last one, and then if we want to wrap up and talk about whatever else, then I'm good, but I'll have to go to bed soon probably, or put the baby to bed or something. When did Absalom rebel against David? So here you go, rebelling against David. 2 Samuel 15, after 4 years had passed, Absalom said to the king, please let me go to Hebron to fulfill a vow I have made to the Lord. And so the argument is this is when it happened. And then later on it says, actually earlier on in 2 Samuel, it says, David was 30 years old when he became king, and he reigned 40 years. So for context, the supposed contradiction here is that if David only reigned for 40 years, then there was no time while he reigned for Absalom to still rebel. The timeline just doesn't match up.
Okay, hold on. So he's in the first one. When's the first one supposed to take place then? So it's 4 years after.
Yeah, let me pull it up. Context is key. 2 Samuel 15. Great, the chapter starts with it saying sometime later.
Yeah, that wouldn't be a contradiction.
Yeah.
Sometime later, okay.
What verse is that? 7? Yeah, this doesn't really help because it just is talking about what Absalom was doing to gain the favor of the people. And then it says after 4 years passed, then he said, I'm going to go to Hebron.
So how old was Absalom supposed to be whenever he rebelled? Maybe that's the grounding they're going with? I don't think he was an old man.
Yeah, I don't think he
So
was
I think
either.
it's 40 years. 40 years.
Well,
okay, so are they saying
this is after the time that Absalom had kids, because in the previous chapter it said 3 sons were born to Absalom, but it doesn't give an age.
Okay, I'm kind of shooting it
sometime. Yeah, it's
in the
sometime
dark here. So I'm assuming that they're saying, okay, well, he was 30 years old when he became king. So Daniel's 30 years old. David was 30 years old when he became king, and he reigned for 40 years.
Mm-hmm.
And then Absalom rebelled.
Yes. So
why?
In 2 Samuel, which chapter was it? In 2 Samuel 5, let me get that up real quick. 5, verse 5, which is right after this second one that we looked at. It says, in Hebron he reigned over Judah 7 years and 6 months. And in Jerusalem he reigned 33 years over all Israel and Judah. So you put those together and it says David reigned for 40 years and 6 months. And so the idea is that extra 6 months is enough time for Absalom to go to Hebron and start the rebellion. And so that fixes the problem. But
well, I guess like in 2 Samuel, after 4 years, what was preceding the 4 years?
Like I said, it's just like him gaining the favor of the people, and the chapter starts out with it saying sometime later. So you can make that fit however much time you want, and then there's not even a contradiction then.
Right.
However, I just saw something as a footnote here that I didn't see before, which it provides another option for this. Some Syriac and some Septuagint manuscripts, instead of saying after 4 years passed, they say after 40 years passed. And that makes me think it's saying after 40 years passed of David's reign, Absalom had said this. So it was in the 40th year of David's reign. And if you combine that with the passage in 2 Samuel 5 that says he reigned an extra 6 months, so in the time from the 40th year to the 40th year and 6 months, we have this time window when Absalom began to rebel.
I mean, that
works.
might be, but again, if this is what they're saying is the evidence, and they don't actually reference that footnote, then I'd have to say the website's making a very poor argument here.
I agree. Let me actually see what the article says on the website. 1 second.
And it didn't say that he reigned continuously for those 40 years. Just say he reigned for 40 years.
Oh, okay. So the alleged contradiction is, on the one hand, you have 2 Samuel 15, the first verse that we read, says it happened after 40 years. And actually, they do use the Septuagint reading there of 40 years.
Okay.
And then, yeah, and then in 2 Samuel 5, it's saying that this happened less than 40 years, since David only ruled a total of 40 years. But, oh, okay, that's what I had included the next verse for, because then it says that he reigned for an extra 6 months. So the question is, did it happen before the 40th year or after the 40th year? And it says in 2 Samuel 5:5 or 5:4 that he reigned 40 years, and in 5:5 that he reigned 40 years and 6 months. So
is that supposed to be the total time period that David reigned all in all?
yes,
Because he
because some
does
of it
come
was in
back and
Israel,
take
some was in
power.
Judah.
So he does come back and take power from Absalom. Memory serves.
I gotta be honest, I don't remember that part. It just said that he reigned in Judah for a certain amount of time and in Israel for a certain amount of time, and if you add those together, it's 40 years and 6 months.
So if we go with some of the other writings, which would make it 40 years instead of 4 years had passed, I'd have to go back and see why they chose 4 years over the 40 years, though. That would
Yeah,
be
that sounds
that
like
would be where I would go with the investigation next.
that sounds like a textual variant question, but okay.
I'll find the monk. I don't know.
Find
Some
him.
of those textual critiques where they're going back and they're finding out who exactly did the alteration. I'm like, man, I'd be terrified if I was one of those guys. Man, they're going to find me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess like I just don't see. It feels like we're missing a piece of information to even make a claim that there's a contradiction here. It's like after 4 years had passed beyond some point, and then down below it says David was 30 years old when he became king, and he reigned for 40 years. I guess I'm just not seeing the.
Let me try to resubmit it to you then. So 2 Samuel 5:4 says David was 30 years when he became king, and he reigned 40 years. So this critic is saying, okay, he was 30 when he became king. That means 40 years exactly. He was 70 when he stopped becoming king, or stopped being king.
70 when he died.
70 when he died, yeah. So 40 years exactly. You have this window of exactly 40 years. Remember, it's a literal reading of the Bible, not any room given.
Right.
And then in
and 40 doesn't
15,
the number 40 doesn't raise any flags.
Yeah.
No, it's not like I already pointed that part out earlier.
Right.
So, but in 2 Samuel 15, it says, and if we're taking the Septuagint reading of the textual variant here, which is what he does in the criticism, because that's what it says in the King James, after 40 years, Absalom rebelled against David. So on the one hand, it says David reigned exactly 40 years. On the other hand, it says sometime after 40 years, while David was still reigning, Absalom rebelled. Does that make sense?
So is the point that instead of 4, they're claiming that it should say 40 after 40 years?
They're not claiming that it should say 40. I have this more modern translation here, and maybe I should have included the King James. He's going based off the King James, and the textual variant that the King James translators used said 40.
Yeah, I think the 40 might not be correct. I think the 4 might be, because it's talking 2 years after his brother, raped his sister.
Well,
that's the thing when that he rebelled and then went from there.
Right. I think if you do use the word 40 there, if you use that textual variant, then it would just be referring to 40 years after David started reigning. But I still think that would not be a problem, because 2 Samuel 5 includes that extra 6 months. So then you could just put it in that time period there, and then you don't have a problem.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it seems like either way, you don't have a problem.
Wow, imagine that. Yeah. If anybody's watching that is interested in looking into contradictions and they want to do their own kind of stuff on this, I would recommend doing it. Well, first I'd recommend getting solid in the fundamentals of Christianity, so you're not being blown about by all the winds of doctrine, as the Bible says. But actually look into it, because I got to be honest, this has been one of the best studies that I've done to beef up my understanding of the Bible, my understanding of what I think inerrancy means, all kinds of other stuff. I know a lot more about Old Testament stories now because I've had to look up these nitty-gritty details. So it was a great study for me. It was like an awesome devotional, just answering these contradictions. And one thing that's really, really cool is on certain problems that he brings up. Like, there's a whole section where he asks, is Jesus God? And he brings up all these verses. Well, he's done the hard work for me and collated, or what's the word, compiled all of the verses that say Jesus is God, or that he says don't say Jesus is God. So now I have them all in one place. So he's done the hard work for us on a lot of these kinds of things. So it was a great study. So if anybody's interested in doing that kind of thing, I recommend it.
Yeah, I mean, we're to put on the full armor of God, and I think going through these, almost like they're pointed out as chinks in the armor, kind of a thing,
Right.
Um,
Yes.
so I think it's just a process of going through your armor and tightening things up,
Okay, quick reference here, real quick.
Uh-oh.
Sorry, I love this sort of history stuff.
Yeah. What was NASB said what? What was that?
NASB says 40 years. Oh, wait, he's saying the NASB. Oh, you're talking about 2 Samuel 15. At the end of 40. Oh, yeah. Okay, yeah. That says the same thing that the King James does, after 40 years. And
oh, weird. So
RPG, I'm not sure what you mean by in details. That's a very vague question.
this is so I'm looking at the ESV and the Logos app, and it says it says in the text, it says at the end of 4 years, but then it has the little what's it called? The little
footnote.
I click on the footnote. I click on that, and it says in the Septuagint Syriac, it says Hebrew 40. So
right. I gotta be honest, I think you could go with either, and it's not a contradiction still. You just use them for different purposes.
There is an explanation for it. This would be, there was a reasonable explanation for it. That's what it comes down to.
Oh, were you going to bring up something?
No.
Oh, okay.
Without diving in and starting to do spreadsheets and data sheets.
I'm going to address this real quick. Whitfield, you say on screen it says 4 years. Yes. So for the vast majority of the verses that I bring up, I'm using the Berean Standard Bible. If you go to BibleHub.com, that's their default one. I think the people that run Bible Hub are in conjunction with the people who have translated or produced the Berean Standard Bible. It's just one that I like. It's a modern translation. There actually are a couple things that I've noticed in it that I don't like ways that they translate some things. But overall, I think it's a good translation. But if you go to Bible Hub or Bible Gateway or something like that, which is what I did for this study, you get like 20 translations all at once if you look up a single verse. So you can look at it through tons and tons of different translations. So you'll have textual variants at times where some Bibles take it one way, some Bibles take it another way, because the translators decided for one reason or another, this is what we're going to include. Oftentimes I've found with the King James, the reason that they include things like this is because there was a lack of manuscripts at that time. So we found a lot more manuscripts since the time of the King James being written.
It's crazy.
Tons. And so
the Dead Sea Scrolls, and for example.
Right, all that kind of stuff. So there are things in the King James where they say the textual, this is what the text says, and manuscripts since then contradict that, and now new translations have to make that decision. Are we going to go with something like what the King James says, or does the evidence actually point in the opposite direction? and say something like for example, with 2 Samuel here, is it 4 years or is it 40 years? If I remember correctly, the Hebrew is very similar for 4 or 40. So that could be an explanation for it where like some scribe made an error once.
So it's more of
Not
a
really
textual criticism as opposed to
an actual error.
It
right,
could
right.
be, yeah, it could be. But the solution here, I don't think, is to say copyist error unless you're going with something like the King James and the evidence points toward it being 4 years instead of 40 years. It's a personal decision you have to make if you really want to look into it. Is this really saying 40 years or is it really saying 4 years, and weigh out the evidence? Personally,
Well,
I
and
think you could take either and it's still not a contradiction. So go ahead.
well, I mean, it just, yeah, I don't know. I mean, after 4 years had passed from what seems to be like a point in time that's not exactly specified, you know. So if the thought is that the rebellion happened at the end of the 40 years, and it's saying after 4 years had passed, I'm thinking that unspecified time must be 4 years before the end of the 40, right?
Sure.
Um,
A comment here says that the Chinese standard version says 40 years plus, some say 4 years. Interesting. Could be. Like I said at the beginning, sometimes I'm not beholden to one answer or another for some of these contradictions, or one harmonization or another. It could go either way, and I'm fine with it. I'm not worried about finding the exact right answer for all of these, because the point I'm trying to make is these are not contradictions because a possibility of harmonization exists. That's the point I'm making.
Right. Yeah. I mean,
So,
to me,
yeah.
this is one of those things where it's like, well, that's an interesting point you bring up. You know, is it 4 or is it 40? You know,
Right.
right. And then it's like it's one of those things that would kind of rattle around in my head where I'm like, I want to figure this one out. You know, it's like a puzzle, and
Does
but
seem
it's
to
not.
be 40.
But
Sorry.
Okay.
it's not one of those things where it's like, oh, my faith is shaken now. Is it 4 or is it 40? I mean, to me, it just seems like, yeah, it seems like there's a logical explanation for this. That it seems like, you know, I haven't dug into it, but I surely will now. You know.
Yeah.
Going to the Hebrew, it does say 40.
Okay.
We'll cross-reference that a couple of spots.
Yeah.
But it makes. But if the Hebrew says 40, but if the Hebrew says 40, then it makes it curious. Like, why would the ESV not? Because usually, I mean, my understanding of the ESV is it's pretty accurate as far as the like translations from the the manuscript text. So like, so I'm curious, why would the ESV have stuck with the 4, even though in a lot of cases it's being pointed out that the Hebrew was 40. So it just makes me me curious.
Yeah. It's an interesting, curious problem, but
Right,
it's not a faith shaker. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Does not change anything about Christianity one way or the other.
I mean, it could be as simple as like a scribal thing.
Yeah, it could be. And I think there are some later on that legit, as far as the King James is concerned, at least, are legit scribal errors, but we know about them, right? So it's
Julian, since you've been pretty good at pulling things up, do you by chance have a Hebrew like number? Like to look at the Hebrew word for 4 versus 40?
Is this what you 40. Put up? That's 40.
That's
is that it right there?
That's what they translate into 40 in some translations. And I double checked, and does that translate into 40?
Can you find the one for 4?
Sure.
For the other translations? Because that'd be interesting to look at. For the wrap up, by the way, since we've reached our last one for tonight, I just want to show everybody this ridiculous Excel spreadsheet that I have and the reality of the study that I've done. At the end, you can take or leave my rating system. I don't really care, but I think that most of these are laughable, and I aim to show people that. So after you find the number 4, I'll share it. And eventually, when I finish the Excel spreadsheet, if anybody wants it, I'll share it too.
Now, it doesn't have it for like different translations because I just went to the Hebrew for that. But this would be the Hebrew
this would be
4. But I do have the Hebrew 4.
Well,
Make sure I got that right. I don't think I...
Oh, okay. I misread the footnote. The 40 is from the Hebrew. 4 is from the Septuagint. So you're going to have to find it in Greek if you're looking for 4, but okay.
Yeah, it was kind of confusing the way that Logos put it. It said Septuagint, comma, Syriac, semicolon, Hebrew 40.
Yes, so that's how it is in mine, and it means as it's read in the text that you're reading right now.
There we go. Sorry,
it's the Syriac and Septuagint, and then semicolon, but the Hebrew says 40. Yeah, it took me a second to read that correctly. Oh, is this 4?
That's 4.
Okay.
In Hebrew.
4.
Can you 40. Do it side by side?
I can't do it side by side, but I don't know. Take a mental image. It's got some of the same. The vowels or the vowel markings are different, but it's got what?
Someone else pointed out earlier
for the same
resh,
characters.
Bet, ein, yod, mem. So does so it looks like it's plural.
Aleph, resh, bet.
You've got an eem.
Yeah. You do have an eem at the end.
So it's the same. It's the same root letters. The one is just plural or with the eem and vowels.
We
figured it out, boys. Cool.
Well, it looks like at least someone in the comments pointed out that Hebrew language counts 1 to 10 and then adds a suffix to make it 0 to 1. And that would be what we're seeing. Now remember,
that's what we're seeing, right?
Not right to left, left to right.
Right. Yes.
Yeah. Backwards from how English is.
Right.
Which always makes it harder writing and doing anything in Arabic.
Copying Hebrew on my keyboard is a pain because you copy it in the opposite direction you do the other text. It's annoying. I'm going to show this real quick and then I'll have to wrap up for today. But I plan to do this stuff weekly if I can. Not sure it's going to be on Monday every week. Next week, I'm actually going on a mission trip for the week, so I'll be out of town. But I intend to do these weekly with whoever wants to be a guest.
No, this is fun.
Because this is fun. Yeah, I find this fun. All right, so here's this ridiculous spreadsheet I have. This is the result so far. I've responded to 591 contradictions, and 63% of them I found to be laughable. 26% have a really easy answer. You just got to do a little bit of work. 10% have multiple options I think are legitimate. The blue here, 1%, is ones that don't apply because they're like Apocrypha. You can see here Maccabees. They're Apocrypha, so I'm just not including them. And then the 0% here is for ones that are like legitimate contradictions. Because I honestly, I have not found a single one yet that I think is a legit contradiction. And I have this gargantuan list. It just keeps going.
I can appreciate that.
I nerd out on this kind of stuff, so sorry if it looks a little OCD, but this is
amazing.
This is several months of work, and I'm not trying to toot my own horn here. I'm just showing you the reality of this. Like, these are you can see the majority of these are red, which means laughable, and then the second biggest is orange, which means just you do a little bit of research and you find it. So I wish that taking down one of these contradictions and showing that it's not a problem would make someone like Steve take it off his website. But
no, they're not.
You'd have to. Well, you weren't here for the first part. He actually changed his mind on one because I talked to him for a little bit. He changed his mind on one, but it wasn't anything I said. He just looked at it and he was like, "Yeah, I'm not really sure there's a contradiction here." But I'd probably have to do that for every individual contradiction, and he probably doesn't want to eviscerate his own website, so they're going to stay up. And atheists are still going to say this is a fantastic website when it's really, really not.
But your brother in Christ, would you like to share anything about the upcoming event we've got?
Oh yeah.
Got quite a few coming up. So we have got this weekend. I'll be doing a live stream on that we validate Mohammed more than Muslims.
Ooh.
So that ought to be fun.
What do you mean by validate?
Well, if you go to my YouTube, it's pretty obvious what it means.
Okay, I see what you mean.
So
Nice.
then we got open Q&A, and then the following week after that, we will be doing the Ohio conference.
Okay.
So that will be the Apologetics Conference in Ohio. It is free this year again. We are still doing the fundraiser. We're hoping to be able to pay all the speakers and not have it come out of my pocket, which would be nice.
Nice. Here's the website.
So, yep. Get your guys' free tickets. There's an online option. There's a potential for a TV crew to actually be there.
Oh, sweet.
To record, and then they might re-release it on their TV channel.
Here's the speakers, by the way.
Yep, David Wood,
You go ahead and read them.
Vocab. We got Anthony. We got Yusama. Me. My wife. Thaddeus. Mary. John and Laura as well. Should be fun.
Nice.
Where were they?
We even got the breakdown of topics.
Last year's
It should be
this year. I
Oh,
didn't even see that before.
Yeah, I didn't
well,
see that
it would
before.
not have been there before because I think we just updated it today.
Oh,
Nice.
sweet.
Yeah, I looked at it earlier and I
Perfect
didn't see it.
So there you go. There's trying to get it all on the screen.
Yeah,
I'll
I
have
have
to look
one
at this later.
topic I will be covering, which will be dealing with misused verses.
Sweet.
So when either Muslims or atheists or Jehovah's Witness, whatever, comes up and says, hey, this verse says X, how do you deal with it?
Awesome.
If it's anything from John, it's going to take you like 3 seconds.
Yeah. That's awesome. I'm planning on going to it if I can make it. I want to. I missed last year, and I was so sad I missed last year. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad you got a lot of... Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
It's cool to have this kind of stuff where, I don't know if anybody watching knows, I'm sure some people do, but there's the Acts 17 community that David put up, or he put together, which a lot of us are a part of. And it's just really cool to see people come together, Christians come together who want to make content on this kind of stuff and expose this stuff and get the word out there online and have a presence online. It's mainly about Islam, at least on the community, but we can talk about all kinds of stuff. And things like this is what comes out of it. So it's not just a bunch of armchair people sitting around their computers and arguing about things. Like, this is legit. Stuff is coming out of it. So I'm super excited to be a part of it.
Right.
In any way that I can. Yeah.
Right. And that seemed to be kind of the mission statement that David had from the Acts 17 community was, for stuff like this to happen. So, because to be honest, I wouldn't have gotten a chance to meet either one of you if it wasn't through that community. But I was going to say too, I'm glad to see that there's going to be a lot of returning speakers. And in addition to that, there's a few bonus speakers that are going to be attending too, like Vocab.
Yeah, Vocab wasn't able to make it last year, so he is an addition.
What is he talking about? I didn't look yet.
This is more generalized. It's not just Islam. This is more cults in general.
I want to ask him about Black Hebrew Israelites.
Yep. I think he is doing something.
Oh, he is Hebrew Israelism. Awesome.
So yeah, Black Hebrew Israelites, he'll be covering that, which of course is his specialty. So he'll be hitting that. I think Yasama is going to have a 2-parter again, maybe. I don't know. My wife's the one that put this together, so she gets all the due diligence on make sure everyone matches and not putting me at the same time as David.
Well, yeah, you guys are doing great.
So, So yeah, it's nice to have all the speakers out again from last year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think everyone from last year is a speaker again.
Right.
Awesome.
Especially
So-
Hatun. Hatun with just kind of with with her situation early, pretty soon after this event, I guess, and it may have been a carryover like during that time period as well. But I'm really happy to see that she's back on YouTube doing her thing. So, and then to be able to attend as well is really nice.
Yeah, I was pretty surprised when she ended up mentioning that, saying, "Yeah, I can come." So, if the Lord's willing, we'll find out.
Mm.
Make sure everything works and there's no sick days.
Hey, there we go.
Last second. So,
Well, thanks
yeah,
for putting
that's
this
what I
together,
got.
Julian.
Yeah. If you can join me some future weeks, let me know, because I'd be
Sure.
happy to have either of you on. This is a lot of fun. I've
Sure.
invited, well, I've invited one other person, but I'll invite some more too. And just have a party and take down some contradictions.
Right. And we had a guest that we weren't even expecting.
Mm-hmm.
A welcome guest, of course.
Yes.
Well, I had to repay the favor I was done yesterday, so I had a whole bunch of Christian brothers just come on and raid my stream. I was doing an
Nice.
open call in, so I'm like, I should go and jump on and join some other channel too, just for the fun of it.
Nice. Well, thank you. We appreciate it.
Yeah.
That was a lot of fun.
I'll let you guys know. Like I said, next week I will be out of town, so I won't be doing it. The week after and through the rest of the summer, pretty much, I can do Mondays. And then I work with college students, and we meet on Mondays for the semester. So once the semester starts, I'll have to switch it up. But at least for the summer, I can do Mondays. So we'll do that. It should be the
Nice.
same link, I think. I might send out another one. Whatever. I'll make it work. But yeah, I hope to see you guys soon. Thanks.
We'll figure it out as we go.
Yeah, thanks everybody for watching and commenting and everything. That was a lot of fun. So
That was fun.
see you guys next time.
All right. Take care.
All right.
Bye, guys.
Bye, guys.